Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. Tiff, what's on the agenda today? I'm fed up with doing it every week. It's your turn to do the agenda. Of course, there was no Formula One.
Obviously, I think we ought to mention that first, the tragedy of those floods in the Emilia Romagna region, where, I think over a dozen people lost their lives. It was horrendous. And Formula One, amazingly, I was almost surprised, did the right thing, But
they did it quickly as well, which was good and unusual for them. So they made a swift and the right decision, no question.
Yeah. So I was actually down in Rome. I was watching the tennis last week. So I'm all the news was there. Bruce Springsteen got a lot of stick because he went ahead with his concert in the same region, not far from where the floods were going. So in contrast to Springsteen and Formula One, they really had to pull out and they did the right thing. But so our thoughts, obviously, with those families in Italy that have gone through such a terrible time. But racing that did go ahead around the world, America, the headlines really we'll talk about the weekend was IndyCar qualifying, the usual amazing drama. There was NASCAR, of course, with the $1 million, not around the championship.
It's always bloody NASCAR.
This wasn't around the championship. It was the $1 million winner takes all Champions Cup, whatever they call it. In Japan, we go over there to check out the Superformula, down to Australia for Supercars, Nurburgring 24-hour race. The ladies doing their Formula One Academy in Spain, and of course back home we have British Touring Cars and British Superbikes going around there. So lots to talk about. But really,
you've missed a couple of other British ones, but we'll come on to them at the end. We'll wrap up the end with a couple others.
You got some surprises there. You got some surprises for us.
I like a little trick up my sleeve. Yes.
IndyCar qualifying. I mean, they just do it. Some of the drama. So Saturday, all 34, only 33 cars going to race, but 34 entries this year. How many as you want.
So it's and just to set the scene, it's an oval.
So it's the oval. It's 220, and they're all flat out. Yeah. Everyone on new tyres is full throttle. New tyres, empty fuel tanks. So it's how your car's set up and how you get your car set up, how brave you are, how loose you like it. If it's push, it's safe and slow, and you have to loosen it up all week until you're in. Nobody crashed in the whole of the weeks of testing or qualifying. But Saturday, the big thing was the top 12 would go through to Sunday's shootout for pole position. The bottom 4 would go through to Sunday's bottom 4, when just the fastest 3 would be in the race. That was big drama for the Sunday. But between the positions 13 to 30, they just get locked into the race. So I think the most relieved people are the midfield and the back of the field people. They get locked into the race, which was, I think, the star headline for British followers of Catherine Legg, who was 30th. And she's with this Rahal Letterman team who just can't get their cars working. And 3 of the 4 that would go through to Sunday's bump day, as they call it, were her teammates. So she out-qualified the other 3 Rahal Letterman cars, all by sort of, 0.02 of a mile an hour slower.
Doesn't matter.
I know. So she was in. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
And
it wasn't.
We've always said the only way to really benchmark how good a driver is against the other drivers in the team.
Teammates, yeah. So get it sorted. But the British were having a bad day, really, because Jack Harvey was one of her 3 teammates that got pushed through to the Sunday qualifying. Callum Ilott scraped in the end 28th. He changed chassis. He was slowest all week building up in the testing, and got a spare chassis out the backyard or something, and managed to scrape in at 28th.
Ferrari Academy boy's not putting it together this year, is he?
Well, he has done well in the street courses, but this IndyCar is all about the team knowing the millimetre setups, which Rahal Letterman, who they won the Indy with Casato in 2020. So they're a team that's won Indy, and now they were struggling. Remember, it was like you remember McLaren. They call it Aero McLaren or Amro McLaren in America. When Alonso didn't qualify in 2020, they had the might of McLaren, and he couldn't get his car going. So it's a very tricky setup to get these things working. And the other Brit, which was good, was Stefan Wilson, got through in 25th. So quickest Brit was 25th, and Stefan, of course, the brother of the late and much lamented Justin, he saves his sponsorship every year. He goes sponsor hunting to do this one race. He doesn't. He can't afford. Hasn't got the backing to race anywhere else. So he just goes around, and so it's brilliant that Stefan.
I thought you were going to be there. I thought you were going to be there this week.
I am. No, next one there for the race. as
qualifying.
Yes, as a guest of Rahal Letterman. So it then went to the bump day and pole day, which was Sunday. The bump came first. The bump was really just the way they go. There's only 4 cars. They got 1 hour. And you go out as many times as you want. But if you go out again, you lose the time you've already got. But if you wait till the end, you might get a queue ahead of it and you might not get out and do another run. So there's a time limit. Everybody plays poker and chess. The leading Rahal team, Christian Lundgaard, the Dane, was on pole position at the Indycar road course 2 weeks earlier, or a week earlier, on pole position. He set the fastest in the runs for 2:29.649. And then Stingray Rob, I love that name, the only non-Rahal car, the Dale Coyne car, he went out and posted a 2:29.549, 1.1 of a mile an hour slower than Lundgaard. And then Graham Rahal, with the team, I was team boss, he went out and did a 2:29.159, leaving Jack Harvey's the slowest. So Jack is now not going to be in the Indy 500, where he lives in Indy.
So I will put my hand up and say, I am a motor racing fan. I have been for as long as I can remember. But I didn't know that you do qualifying in terms of top speed, not lap time.
It's 4 laps as well. It's 4 laps. So it's massive tension. So Harvey, they went out. Harvey was slowest. And then they have to cool the cars. They say you can't go quick straight away because you've got to go. He went out again and went around slowly to cool everything down. And they changed the suspension setup because he said it was all a bit loose. It was scrubbing speed a bit. And then he went out and did a 2:28.92. So he was still out. And now there's only about 5 minutes left. So he decides then, without any cooling, but with a small change of the wings or something, to just slang on some new tire. Out he went with 1 minute of qualifying left, meaning that nobody else behind him could go out again. And just in every lap, the commentators, he's on the pace. He's done a 2:29.064. Now he's done a 2:29.543. What would his third lap be? And Graham Rahal sitting in his car. And after the sort of the first attempt, when Harvey didn't go any quicker, he thought, I should be in. But Harvey, with all this business about cooling his engine off, was forgotten, went out in a hot car with a new set of tyres and went 0.007 miles an hour faster than Graham Rahal to put his team boss out and Jack Harvey in. So it's just the drama and the tension. So the British drivers are 24th, 28th, 30th and 33rd. So I'm not going to predict here a British win.
So I'm just looking now at my friend Mr. Google, and apparently the fastest 4-lap average was 234 miles an hour in 2022 for poles. So they've so it's a big difference, isn't it?
It's about a 4 mile an hour gap. Yeah. But it's then because pole then happened. What was pole then last year? I think it went quicker.
234.046.
Okay, well, Palou, the Spanish boy, took pole position after the bump session happened. There was then the 1 hour session with the top 6. So in the morning, the top 12 had been cut down to the top 6. The top 6 went for pole. Alex Palou took it at 2:34.217.
Do you know the fastest ever was in 1996? It's unusual for things to go backwards, but obviously a completely different car.
Yeah,
and
different regulations, different cars.
Different regulations, yeah. But that was nearly 237, just a
was it 237? 96 was still choice of chassis, I think, back then. You had the Lolas and Dalaras and...
Must have been Andretti and the boys back then. Anyway, we digress. Lots of numbers.
So all sorts of internationals, though. The Spanish boy Palou pole, Dutch Rinus VK second, Swede Felix Rosenqvist third, top American was Santino Ferrucci and the very small AJ Foyt team, which surprised, beat all the Andretti boys and beat other Americans.
Because I thought the Brits didn't do that well on the ovals because of just lack of practice. You don't grow up on ovals. I know we had Rockingham.
Nige went out there. Nige's first IndyCar win was an oval. He absolutely shocked them.
Did he? Wow.
You know, we've had Dario Franchitti. We've had a lot of Dario Franchitti. He's won it 3 times. So there's been plenty of Brits out there doing well in IndyCar.
I mean, I know you've had a few run-ins with Nige over the years, but he's got confidence. Let's say confidence. Well, yeah, he's got lots of confidence. But
that's why
whether it's golf, karate, driving, you know, he's been there, done it, and got the T-shirt. But he's a very talented man.
Well, like you say, I think, you know, most British drivers were not used to ovals. Would go out there and tentatively build up, you know. But Nige, bold as anything, he just went out and stuck it. I mean, he put in the wall big time early on.
What was the run-in you had with Nigel? Please tell me that run-in you had with Nigel that everyone talks about.
Well, he knocked me off.
Well, he crashed into me. He says you knocked him off.
He crashed into me at Donington.
He said you crashed into him.
He was out of control coming across. I tried to miss him, and I put him straight into the bridge. Mexican Pato won fourth of McLaren, 2 McLarens in the top 6. In fact, 4 McLarens in the top 9. So all 4 of those in the top 9, whereas only 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they couldn't even get Alonso on the grid. So, yeah, really, I'm going to be there. So everybody else, you can all go to Monaco if you want. But I'm finally, having not got a job to work at in Monaco, I'm finally, thanks to Graham Rahal, who must be distraught today, he was in tears. The interviews, they're straight in, in America. You don't muck about and wait to get to the press office, and the wife's there with the kids and he's in tears. The drama isn't just on the track, it is the personalities, because the pressure of that bump day, the pressure of a week at, going around at 230 miles an hour. So massive drama. So the whole weekend really on television, I think the IndyCar qualifying probably was the highlights.
How many people were there, do you know, in the crowd?
No, I didn't know what the crowd number was.
But they get, it's going to be packed next week. You're lucky you got VIP.
It's the biggest.
Flying in a helicopter?
I don't think so, no. I've got to get to the track somehow. I'm looked after by Ray Hulls when I'm there. They've got a seat for me and maybe somewhere to have a little drink. It's got the record, I think, for the world's biggest sporting spectators. I think it had 400,000 one year, or 350.
Unbelievable.
So it's got the biggest capacity.
See, unlike Formula 1, your camera's slipping, by the way. We're seeing lots of ceiling with you.
Blimey.
For those of you that are watching. But unlike Formula 1, of course, they announced the amount of people. Whilst Tiff has a camera malfunction. Formula 1, they say, we had the record crowd this weekend at Monaco, 300,000 people. And they mean all weekend from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And I hate that. Yeah. All you ever want to know, isn't it? You want to know what the crowd was on the day at the track. That's what really counts, not adding it up. So I'm absolutely buzzing. I won't see any quality. I don't even have a warm-up in the morning. I think it's just into the race now. So they'll be coming round on the pace car laps and the American anthem will be flying. The prayers will be prayed. The whole
do you know that Star Spangled Banner when they do sing that, and it's always so over the top, but it does get you going, and they're so patriotic, unlike us.
Yeah. I know. Well,
they are super unpatriotic.
Well, they're the opposite. I mean, they accept Muslims and Buddhists and every other religion happily to live in America. But at their sporting, they said, we're a Christian country, so we'll do Christian prayers and we'll play our anthem. And then, but you're quite happy to join. You don't have to put your hand on the thing, Whereas in England, we tend to shy away from it all, don't we? Mustn't upset anyone.
People. Yeah,
I know. So, Americans do it American way, which I quite enjoy. And of course, then also in America last weekend, the race was at NASCAR, and this was this $1 million, the All Star race, which only happens once a year. Winner takes all. There's heats on the Saturday, and there's a final, there's a qualifying race. It's been a different format. It's not a straight up NASCAR race. But they went to this North Wilkesboro track, which shut down about 20 years ago. I think the last NASCAR race there was in 1996. And it's steeped in history track. And it was all weeds and tumbleweed. They literally had to rebuild the track. It's like getting Brooklands back and working again. They put millions of pounds of government money and tourist money. And the 0.625 mile, or the 5/8 mile, as Americans like to have fractions for their tracks, half mile, 5/8, came alive again at North Wilkesboro. And it was just another amazing story of who, this Kyle Larson kid. He's now about 30 now. He still looks like a child. And he was rubbish in the NASCAR. His NASCAR car was rubbish. In fact, his engineer decided to change something, go a bit dramatic. It wasn't a championship round, so they just tried something different for the $1 million win all. And apparently, Larson, the commentators will talk about, he's got no idea on car setups at all. And he goes midweek to a quarter-mile midget race on dirt and wins, and then he'll go to somewhere, and apparently this was his 190th track he was racing on or something in his history. Someone come up with the fact. So anyway, he qualified 16th in the heats. He was rubbish. His car wouldn't work. He just drives the balls off it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But in the meantime, there was a truck supporting race. The truck was sort of third tier of NASCAR. And his co-driver was supposed to drive was injured, couldn't drive it. So, okay, Carl, you drive the truck, will you? And he won the truck race. And then in the NASCAR race, the $1 million All Stars, he started 16th and he was sort of going around the back and it wasn't really working. And there was a caution on about halfway through. 100 laps was going to be half time. There's a regulation caution, but there was an early caution after about 40 laps of the 200. So he went to the pits, they fiddled with a few things and put a new set of tyres on. And then he got caught speeding up the pit lane on the pit stop. So he then started at the back with new tyres on and just drove to the front of the field, just drove through the 24 cars on the grid. Very difficult overtakes, very single file, hugging the inside track. And he got to the front, and then halfway through the race, they pitched another set of tyres and just pulled away at the front. And there weren't more yellows. Surprisingly, he said in the interview afterwards, because it's a very push and shove short track, where normally you'd expect more yellows. So, but it never came. So he had about a 4-second lead. He's now got a stand. He does one lap for the short tracks, which is half a mile or 5/8 of a mile. He does a reverse burnout, power slides the entire oval with smoke coming off, crowd going wild. Imagine that again in England. You'd be banned, fined, thrown out.
Well, we'll come on to that with BTCC in a moment, because the rules and regulations in England seem
getting tighter and tighter. But it was the Kyle Larson show. I mean, the commentators are just marvelling at this moment. Of course, we're all looking forward to him doing the Indy 500. Even the NASCAR boys, saying we can't all wait for our Kyle Larson.
Is he a bigger hero than the biggest Indy star over there? Is NASCAR?
Well, the commentators are saying, he's the greatest, he's the real go-to all time. He's just it. But I don't know about public opinion. NASCAR's still a bit of a niche format. It's a huge crowd, huge country. NASCAR's not, I don't know how big it is. It's down in the south. It's more of a southern-based thing than the rest of America.
Who did you support before Kyle Larson, before he came around?
Well, it was Montoya going to NASCAR that caught my interest in my son, Harry. We started following Montoya, who's one of our favourite Grand Prix drivers. So when he started doing NASCAR, we followed him, the 42. And then when he left, Kyle Larson took his place. So then we followed Larson because he was now... But also we'd seen how good he was, and the way... His style of driving is entertaining. When it's the wall, when they go they do a whole lap of the wall, an inch off the wall, going up high, and you make the groove. The top groove is quicker when it's rubbered in. At the beginning of the race, the lane 1 works, and lane 2 is a bit still. As cars begin to, and the grit moves up as races go on, and rubber gets laid down. But Kyle would always be the first one up in lane 3 or lane 4, the first one grazing the wall at 150 miles an hour.
Do you not get marbles? I know they sweep it after on yellow flags, but do you not get marbles?
I know. Well, maybe because of the banking. It's a good point. I don't know where the ovals go, or where the marbles go. I mean, they're basically swept up and up until they're. Certainly in IndyCar, you get marbles, the grey as they call it. And there is marbles out there. If you go the grey, you just understeer the wall. You just have no control. So, but anyway, so quite spectacular. He won his $1 million. And everyone seemed happy, although the race wasn't
who wins $1
exciting.
million? It can't be the driver. It must be the team, surely. Must be the team.
Contractual things to be debated. Then around to Japan, we went off from America. Japan, we had the third round of the Superformula single-seaters. And this is one to watch out for. This Kiwi, Liam Lawson. The reason why we're following really the Superformula this year is because he's out there with Red Bull. It's something that Gasly did a few years back, was quite successful. And he had his second win and now leads the points. And of course, coincidentally, the rumours back home of a certain AlphaTauri driver might not be performing quite as well as they'd hoped. Nick De Vries obviously having a bad time, and rumours that it could be the smiling Aussie might be looking in that seat to come back into Formula One instead of sitting in the garage. Or this cool Kiwi, Kiwi Liam Lawson, who won again. So watch that name. He could be coming a Formula One your way. Round down under Supercars, Simmons Plain. Still no joy for the Ford Mustangs, who can't get near. I'm amazed the balance of power isn't. I think it is. I did read a rumour, but I can't find it this morning. They are going to change it again. Because the Camaros were first to third in the first race, top 3 in the second race, top 5 in the third race. 2 wins for Will Brown, 1 for Brock Feeney, and the championship, Brody Kostecki, good names, had a second. He still leads the point. So Aussie Supercars, as always, good fun. And good. The Van Ginsberg is going to come over and do a street race in NASCAR, which is quite interesting because everyone reckons Van G. I want to nick him. Anyway, he's going to come. I agree, he's incredibly talented. He's a Kiwi, though. He's dominated Aussie Supercars for many years. He's 4th in championship at the moment, I think, and quite a character. He's coming over to one of the NASCAR races. So Aussie's coming up. Where else do we go around the world? Back into Europe. Nurburgring 24-hour race. Again, I just saw bits and bobs.
Yeah, I saw bits and bobs as well. I saw some people there with Audi. They took over all the big dogs. We didn't get to crack them off.
It's a long follow on. That was great commentary. They go on. The British boys give us a great commentary, but it's sort of a be there and drink beer event. I think the 24 hours.
It's like a festival, isn't it? Nurburgring 24
like Le Mans.
hours.
Yeah, it's the Le Mans for GT cars in a way. Yeah. Well, a Spa 24-hour race as well. You've got Spa, Nurburgring, amazing. A lot of 24-hour race, big names, have a lot of history.
We're coming to the biggest 24-hour race at the end of this podcast, so please stay tuned.
Okay, there's more
the biggest of the weekend. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, in the Nurburgring, for the first time in 21 years, a non-German car won it with the Fricadelli. I like that team name. The Fricadelli Ferrari 296 GT31. And part of the driving lineup of 4 drivers, the Briton David Pittard, who was in it when he crossed the line.
Brilliant.
So congratulations. We had a British win in the Nurburgring in a Ferrari. BMWs was second and Mercedes third. So obviously the real enthusiast fans would have been following that on the internet over the weekend. Also in Europe, back down in Barcelona, the ladies, the Formula One Academy ladies were having must be the 3rd weekend now. They've been having a lot of races. And wins spread around. The Dutch girl Emily de Huis won. The Swiss Lena Bühler had a win, and the Emirati Amna Al-Qubaisi had a win. But still, no wins for Britain.
Remind us of the Brits.
Abby Pulling. Grant, Abby Pulling. No, you got me going. I haven't got all the names. There's 5 names. You caught me out. You did that purposely. I did
not.
I'm doing so well.
Abby's Alice Powell in it or not?
No.
She's Alpine now, isn't she?
Abby's the only one. No, a couple did Formula E women's win. Anyway, Abby still hasn't won. She had a 2nd and a 4th, and she's now 4th in the championship. But she's got about half of the points of Spain's Marta Garcia, who leads. So I think she's a very disappointed Abby Pulling at the moment, struggling to take a win. And that was my European and global tour. And back home, of course, at the BTCCCs at Snetterton.
I like Snetterton. Do you like Snetterton as a racetrack?
I have never raced on the new circuit. And I get a lot of people saying it's a bit sort of middly. I hate when I've driven around a road car. That last corner, Coram, to me, was the most wonderful corner because you'd go around teetering on the brink.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a short straight down to this Russell chicane, which you could take flat just about in most single-seaters, there's so many lethal crashes, well, I had to change it. Well, not lethal, didn't kill too many people. But I had a huge jump there in a Formula 4, rolled my Formula forward when someone spun in front of me. But that never-ending right-hand, Coram now goes on and on and on, and then you have to try and stop and turn sharp left for that stupid chicane. Big debate about, all the pundits were up there with Steve Ryder, Harvey and O'Neill saying, we can't have this because, consistency in track limits. And I understand what they're saying, but, they don't give an option. I hate people that criticise us.
Absolutely.
What's the solution? Tell me the
solution.
Tell me the solution. What would you do then to stop it? They did point out they have to have motorbike curbs. But again, nobody came up with the idea. I think some tracks have got these bolt-on curbs. I don't see why we can't have more big.
What about this for a solution? Hear me out here. Here's a solution.
She'll say big curbs, launch cars, and break backs.
Here's a solution: a drive-through penalty. Okay, now a drive-through penalty is horrific because you'll go from first to last or wherever. Horrific.
You're finished.
However, you're finished, but then you know where you are, and it's not you're not calculating after the race. And you know that if you do it, you want to avoid a drive-through penalty at all costs. So you're not going to exceed track limits. It's as simple as that. Because we all get a warning. It's not the first time you.
Yeah, but they said that. But they said all the drivers said, "Yeah, okay, we know the deal, and we know where you can, certain corners, and you have to be careful." But it stops the bravado manoeuvre. It stops someone being chased, getting on the ragged edge. It stops the drivers driving on the ragged edge. Like Collard did at Brands Hatch and got disqualified for driving on the ragged edge.
And the worst thing about it would be if you did do that and you were deemed by the stewards, but then it was overruled afterwards. That's an awful way to lose a race, isn't it?
You can't.
Yeah.
They get warnings. I mean, they do it twice. They're getting most of the drivers said we all know the rule.
Yeah.
But it is the problem that drivers won't risk driving 10 tenths on the ragged edge for the whole race. So that's the.
I told you a couple of times, Paul. You've done it. We've all done it. Where you're going to get track limits, but you want to get a bit of a gap. You got a bit of a gap, and you're going to get track limits, but you'll just gun it because you're prepared to take one for the team. But if you're doing it over and over again, I don't know what the solution is. That was my idea, but it's
just the fact that if it's a judge of fact and there's 6 cars coming through, the leader you might see, he was a millimetre over, but you can't see if he's. You have to you almost have the judge of fact in a hot air balloon above the corner looking down or something.
All the sensors like they have at many of the Palmer tracks.
Well, apparently they were saying the new rule, the sensors are now too far away because you're way off before you get to. So the sensors will have to come in. I think but still, even if you've got sensors there, the fact that track limits is the rule, you're not going to get people driving on the ragged edge, which is what motor racing to most people is all about. So, but ragged edge and dangerous is also something I lived through my entire. Le Mans, I was racing in the most horrendously dangerous times, but that was all part of almost, I hate to say it, the enjoyment. I knew I was on a knife edge, and if I went a mile an hour quicker, I'd be hitting that bloody barrier, 3 feet across the grass at 160, 70 miles an hour sort of thing, and it's Eau Rouge at Spa and, corners that weren't flat at Spa. I was, and that was part of what made it such a challenge. It made it more of a challenge. If I could just go out like nowadays, Eau Rouge especially, when they just straight line it. If you have a bit of a problem with the right hand of Eau Rouge at the bottom, you simply go straight. You don't do the left hand of what's it called, the top bit. Yeah. So that debate was big debate at the beginning. They had a big talk about it, but didn't come up with an optional solution, which I thought was a bit disappointing.
Why don't we ask them on Twitter? Ask these boys that keep complaining about it. What's their solution?
Well, Tim won't. I tried Tim Harvey. I tried to get him going on Twitter, but he wouldn't respond. He seems to have maybe there's a rule. Maybe they're not allowed to have an opinion away from the track. They're only allowed to put their opinion on the ITV. So most of the drivers, I think, just said, well, we're going to have to live with it sort of thing. Unless you make it dangerous again, which Abby Eaton says, well, it broke my back having a curb, that sort of restriction.
In fairness, it's horrific what happened to Abby, and I agree with her. But motor racing incidents happen, and it's there aren't many. Are there? I don't know. Are there many sausage curb incidents like that? And that was an unusual.
Well, no, there was a silly one. Yeah, is it 90 degrees? That was one Abbey. It was stupid because obviously if both front wheels hit a curb at the same time, you're going to get the launch. But if it's an angle, you get one wheel over and the other wheel over. It shouldn't be as violent. I don't know. But there's quite a vicious curb at the end of the back straight. There's the left braking, and then there's a tight right. That's got quite a nasty curb.
Did they have the tyre barrier? The tyre wall?
No, they didn't have one up. No, but it's quite a vicious curb there. So it's not when you. So anyway, but through this all, it's becoming a bit of a sort of top 6 and nobody else forming at the moment. BTCC. We've got Ash Sutton, who's just in a ridiculous. He's like Lawson in NASCAR. He's almost the Larson of BTCC.
I hope this is his last season in BTCC. I really hope he goes up and does something else.
He should go some. Talent's great, but he's got his little Ford Focus working to how he likes it. And a stunning pole position. And then stunning. The first 2 races, when of course it's not reverse grids, which he won. He had a 2-second lead at the end of the first lap in a British touring car wreck. It's stunning, especially as the BMWs that are packed up behind him can get off the line better. The fact the first race, I think, because now the good thing about BTCC, because they're trying, obviously the racing hasn't been as good this year, is that they brought all 3 tyre compounds. You had to run all 3 in the 3 races. There's quite a difference with the soft and the hard. So you had different packs running and who was on the quicker tyres. But in the first race, I think Ash had the medium tyre and the BMWs had the soft tyres. You all thought they'd launch off the line with more grip and be all over Ash, but instead he just pissed off. There's Ash Sutton in his Ford. Then there's a pack of BMWs, and then there's good old Tom Ingram in his Hyundai, hanging on and getting a win in the reverse grid race. And Tom's hanging in there, but he seems to be the sort of only other one from outside of the front pack. Of course, Dan Camish has been up the front along with Ash in his Ford. But he fell off his idiot in qualifying, caused a red flag, so he didn't get his time. So to start at the back of the grid for race 1. He got up to 11th in race 1, Then in race 2, I think he might have gone for the hard tires. He didn't progress anymore. He went from 11th to 11th, and then kept the softs for the reverse grid race and battled from 11th up to 2nd, catching the lead. He was right on Tom Ingram's tail, and then got disqualified when he's failed the ride height check at the end. So
that's so frustrating.
Dan went from
when your team let you down.
I know, he went from bad to brilliant to bad again. So Dan had the biggest up and down. A great crowd. I mean, Stetson's a good circuit to watch from. The Formula 4s are all over the place, and the minis were great races.
You watched the race at Stetson once, a boring one of mine when I was probably mid-pack.
Yeah.
In the middle section there, you got the bank, and you can look over quite a bit of the track. Yeah, it's a good track. I like Stetson. It's just a long way.
If they just change the circuit, I mean, it annoys me. The tracks that get designed don't end up with being good racing tracks.
But see, what I like about Snetterton, I think it is a good race track for certain cars. For Caterham's, it worked because you got long straights, you got a couple of little tight corners, but it works for certain cars. But I understand BTCC, it might not be the perfect track,
right? Or
for you, for your fast stuff.
And then touring cars weren't your thing. Of course, we forgot to preview touring cars last week. I forgot all about them. British Superbikes up at Donington. They've got 2 wheels. I haven't watched any of that, as I've been at the tennis watching. 2 wins for Kyle Ride's Yamaha, 1 win for Jason O'Halloran's Yamaha. So the Yamaha weekend at Donington, but it's still Tommy Bridewell and Glenn Irwin that top the points with their beer monster Ducatis. All for the beer monster Ducatis. 3rd and 4th in the points are the 2 BMWs of Josh Brooks and Leon Haslam, with Kyle Ride the top Yamaha in 3rd. In 5th, I mean. So I don't know if there's any drama up there because I must apologise to bikers. I didn't catch up with the news. And that really is my world tour for today. You've got some news, you said.
Well, I've got Caterham.
Another 24-hour race as well.
First, Caterham, a quick roundup of the boys who are up in Croft, boys and girls, and all sorts of people up in Croft. Academy, just going to run through the winners very, very quickly because I love Caterham racing.
No, we support Caterham.
Yeah, Daniel Neal in the white group, Jonathan Emery in the green group. So Callum, the new media driver, he's been dominating the green group.
Well, you said, did he win again?
No, he came 5th. Jonathan Emery won that. And a big shout out to Megan Bruce. She's only, I think, she won't like me for this, 17, maybe 18. Certainly, I think in her teens. And she came 9th. So I was chuffed for Megan. Yeah, very good.
Is she an ex-karter? Can you be a karter? Was that the Academy driver?
Yeah, Academy. So her
so
first
can you have been a kart racer?
No
license at all. It has to be
no racing experience. There's a little bit of an etiquette because you know that lots of the guys go and spend thousands on driver coaches
a year.
and
driver
testing.
coach.
Road Sport, Ben Timmons, he seems to be dominating Road Sport. 2 wins over the weekend. Then we come into the 270, which is where I would have been, and it's really the Charlie and Fred race. Charlie Lower got 2 wins, and Fred Chinnix.
They moved up another class then.
They have. So no windscreens now, wider track, LSD, etc. Fred, I spoke to him earlier. He said that it was literally the hardest or the tightest 3 races of his life. Dr. Andy Palmer was in that race as well. Ex-GT racing driver. So, from Aston Martin, the CEO of Aston Martin.
Yeah.
He's in that
Where's he working now?
He's been a freelance, I think. So I'm not going to say, I will tell you his lap times. He was 8 seconds a lap off.
You just said it.
Well, I know, but he won't mind. It's all on TSL. It's
all having fun, yeah.
And then, exactly, it's also having fun. And then in the 310s, again, so tight in the 310s, but Jack Sales got 3 wins, 3 out of 3 for Jack Sales. And finally, the 24-hour race that I really want to mention was just, this is the type of motorsport that we should mention a little bit more. And please bring these events to us. So it was the BRSCC Citroen C1 24-hour race at Silverstone. And this 24-hour race.
Short track or long one?
No, the long one, the long track.
Ooh.
Yep. So
you have a sandwich down the straights. Can you get picnic out?
Yeah, it took about 3 minutes, 50 seconds per lap time.
How many starters?
Hundreds of cars, lots of different categories. But this 24-hour race turned into a 10-minute sprint. And basically in the last 13 minutes of this 24-hour race, the leading car, which is the Emax Motorsport car, decides they need a bit of a splash and dash, a bit of fuel, because they're obviously on the edge. Now, for those that know, a pit stop with this sort of thing is normally about 2 seconds. If you're unbelievably quick, 1 minute, 30 seconds. because the driver's got to get out. They could just use gravity only, one of those old things. And then you've got to stand behind a line, and you've got a couple of marshals there with a clipboard. Oh, I remember it from the Race of Remembrance. So they've got 1 minute 39 to get back out in front of the lead car, which was the Trojan car, driven by Charlie Bingham. Now, they did that by a few seconds. And they changed driver as well. So it was all literally with a couple of laps to go. They got the Trojan car overtook their Emax Motorsport car, and it was neck and neck. And then with just over a lap to go, there was contact between Emax and Trojan. And it was deemed, so it was just amazing racing. This last 10 minutes, the commentators...
He put him off. Did they spin or just a push?
He span. So he span. So the... Emax car was deemed to have spanned the Trojan car. So came in, the Emax car thought he won it, but in fact they got a 3 minute 30 drive-through penalty, which means they didn't even get on the podium after all that. But it was just...
What about the one that spun out? Did he get back and win?
He got back. He was 16 seconds behind, so they won the race. So
third place didn't inherit a lucky win then.
They didn't.
So they got to second.
Exactly.
How many on the lead lap at the end then, for goodness sake?
3 on the lead lap after 25.
Oh, I see, only 3.
Yeah, but still, they're still pretty good.
Well, it's mega clever. For the money they're spending, I mean, so how many are you allowed to have 4 of you? I know there was a driver list. You have 6 of you.
I think there were some with 5 or 6. There were some with only 3, so it was good. But Stuart Eakins, he's a viewer of ours. He sent me this information, and he said the pros and cons: great racing, great access to the teams and the paddocks. You can get right up close. Only 30 quid for the weekend, he said, but it was a bit expensive at the burger van. So and they do close the cafe overnight, so bear that in mind. But absolutely brilliant racing. I watched the last sort of 20 minutes of this to get the whole atmosphere. It was really very good. And I like this guy in the Trojan car. He was interviewed afterwards about the spin, and you know how emotional we all are when an incident's happened. Oh my God, this guy was so calm, and he's a northerner, and he's like, well, just wait and see the footage, and the footage will talk for itself. And he was so calm about it.
Was he the one that got the penalty? Was he the one?
No, he was the opposite. He was
on the one it in the end.
Yeah. So yeah, he was right. He was right to be that calm and cool about it.
Maybe we should have Citroen C1 racing in Monaco this weekend. Maybe that might brighten up Monaco.
No, it's slow. It's brilliant. I love it. It's absolutely brilliant.
They wouldn't be slow around Monaco. Imagine plunging up and down the hill. You'd have to drop a gear going up the hill after Saint Devote.
You probably have to drop 2 gears. But the founder of this,
I know it's very popular. I've seen the results before.
Yeah, and they've had it confirmed. Their sponsors have confirmed for another year now, which is great. So look forward to that in 2024. What have we got coming up next week, Tiff?
Monaco, which I won't be watching, and I think will be excitement of qualifying, as long as people don't spin out deliberately and cause more controversy. It's always spectacular, Monaco. But it is, we all know the race isn't much of a race, but they are amazing to watch those top drivers round there. And of course, got Formula 2 and Formula 3, so there'll be plenty of barrier clanging in the junior ranks, I've no doubt.
Do you know anyone that's ever raced at Monaco? Anyone that's ever had a go at Formula 1 in Monaco?
Well, someone didn't qualify, I remember, myself. And I raced the Jaguar XR15. I raced Formula 3 and Jaguar XR15 and didn't qualify for my Grand Prix attempt there. Well, I was in the race. It was like bump day because, only 20 cars got on the grid. There were 28 of us all out on the track at the same time. I was 19th in the wet Friday session, so I was on the grid, but didn't make it. I crashed in the dry. But just an experience. I've driven a Grand Prix car around Monaco, was just awesome. Incredible memories.
And especially the noise of it back in those days through the tunnel. Was it a V8 back then?
Yeah, it was Cosworth TFVs. Yeah. Everyone Cosworth, apart from Ferraris. So Monaco, obviously the place to be if you're champagning on a boat somewhere and watching tops and crash helmets. You can't even see tops and crash helmets howling now because they're all in their covers and stuff. Indy 500 where I will be, and I'm buzzing. I mean, I've just never been to this event. I can't wait for it. NASCAR at Charlotte. Back home, not much. British GT is the only thing I can see really going on at the weekend. Donington, where Jake Hill, the BTCC star BMW driver, is going to join a BMW team for the British GT at Donington, which should be interesting. And Jake's great. He does Goodwood in an old Ford Escort, a Capri. So he races historic stuff, Jake. He loves racing. His dad was a big enthusiast and still is. And the BMW GT3 is the car to beat at the moment. I mean, the Ferrari beat them in Nurburgring, but they came first and second at Monza. They won the British GT, the last round of the British GT. So it should be good to see Jake Hill in that if you wish to go to Donington for the weekend.
Enjoy Indy. We look forward to your live reporting.
I don't know where I'll be. I'll be with a hangover in some American diner. Tiff Needell
Don't go to Cracker Barrel, for goodness sake.
I love a Cracker Barrel. What? I love a Cracker Barrel.
A taste of paradise, a Malibu and a Cracker Barrel in the morning. Brings back some memories. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.